Hello and welcome back. Today is Monday, January 6th, 2025, and we're reading Chapter 5 of Abhorsen by Garth Nix today. Yesterday, I said 2024 at the beginning of the video, and I didn't even catch it while I was editing it, so I wonder if any of you caught that I said the wrong year last night. I'm not surprised. The past 24 hours have been interesting, to say the least. I didn't end up getting to use my chainsaw last night. Well, I could have used it, but I chose not to because I didn't feel like I was in a good enough emotional state to play with something so dangerous last night. So I used my better judgment, and my husband and I just took all the ornaments off the tree, and he unstrung the lights, so the tree is all ready for me to delimb today if I so choose to do it, but I just didn't have it in me last night, so I'm going to get into reading this chapter, but I think after this video I'm going to take a moment to decompress a little bit and then make a recording, and I don't think I'll post it at the end of this video. I think I'm going to post it. I think I'm just going to make a separate video, but I have a lot on my heart and a lot weighing on my chest, and I feel really compelled to share it. I don't think that this is something that's going to fully go away unless I spit it out, essentially. So anyways, I'm gonna get to reading. I'm excited to get out of my head a little bit and talk in some strange voices that aren't mine, and go to another place for just a little bit. Then I'll come back to being Jerica later, so let's get into it. Alright. Chapter 5. Blow wind, come rain. "Exactly where under our feet?" exclaimed Sam. He looked down anxiously, his sword and spell-casting hand ready. "What can we do?" asked Lirael quickly. "Do you know what that was? How do we fight it?" The dog sniffed scornfully at the ground. "We will not need to fight. That was a Ferenc, a scavenger. Ferencs are all show and bluster. This one lies under several ells of earth and stone now. He will not come out till dark, perhaps not even till dark tomorrow." Sam scanned the ground, not trusting the dog's opinion, while Lirael bent down to talk to the hound. "I've never read anything about free magic creatures called Ferencs," said Lirael, "not in any of the books I went through to find out about the Stilken." "There should be no Ferenc here," said the dog. "They are elemental creatures, spirits of stone and mud. They became nothing more than stone and mud when the charter was made. A few would have been missed, but not here. Not in a place so traveled." "If it was just a scavenger, what killed these poor people?" asked Lirael. She'd been wondering about the wounds she'd seen, and not liking the direction her thoughts were going in. Most of the corpses had, like the guardsmen, 2 holes bored right through them, holes where clothing and skin were scorched around the edges. "Certainly a free magic creature, or creatures," said the dog, "but not a Ferenc. Something akin to a Stilken, I think. Perhaps a Jarek, or a Hish. There were many thousands of free magic creatures who evaded the making of the charter, though most were later imprisoned, or made to serve after a fashion. There were entire breeds, and others of a singular nature, so I cannot speak with absolute certainty. It is complicated by the fact that there was a forge here long ago, inside the Ring of Thorns. There was a creature bound inside the stone anvil of that forge, yet I can find neither anvil nor any other remnants. Possibly whatever was bound here killed these people, but I think—" The dog paused to sniff the ground again, wandered in a circle, absently snapped at her own tail, and then sat down to offer her conclusion. "It might have been a twinned Jarek, but I am inclined to think the killing here was done by 2 Hish. Whatever did the deed, it was done in the service of a necromancer." "How do you know that?" asked Sam. He'd stopped circling when the dog started, though he still kept on looking at the ground. Now he was looking for signs of a stone anvil as well as an erupting Ferenc. Not that he'd ever seen an anvil here. "Tracks and signs," replied the dog. The wounds, the smells that remained, a three-toed impression in soft soil, the body hung in the tree, the thorns stripped from 7 branches in celebration. All this tells me what walked here, up to a point. As to the necromancer, no Jarek or Hish or any of the other truly dangerous creatures of free magic has woken in 1,000 years, save to the sound of Sabriel and Sareneth, or by a direct summons using their secret names. Hedge was here, whispered Lirael. Sam flinched at the name, and the burn scars on his wrists darkened, but he did not look at the scars or turn away. Perhaps, said the dog. Not Clore, anyway. One of the greater dead would leave different signs. They died 8 days ago, continued Lirael. She did not question how she knew this. Now that she had seen the corpses more closely, she just knew. It was part of her being an Abhorsen. Their spirits were not taken. According to the Book of the Dead, they should not be past the 4th gate. I could go into death and find one. She stopped, as both the dog and Sam shook their heads. I don't think that's a good idea, said Sam. What could you learn? We know that there are bounds of the dead and necromancers, and who knows what else roaming around. Sam is right, said the dog. There is nothing useful to learn from their deaths. And since Sam has already announced our presence with charter magic, let us give these poor people the cleansing fire, so that their bodies may not be used. But we should be quick. Lirael looked across the field, blinking as the sun cut across her eyes, over to where the young man who had once been Bara lay. The name came to her as she looked. She had thought about finding Bara in death, and telling his spirit that the girl he had probably forgotten years ago had always wished she had talked to him, kissed him even, done anything other than hide behind her hair and weep. But even if she could find Bara in death, she knew he would be long past any concerns of the living world. It would not be for him that she sought his spirit, but for herself, and she could not afford the luxury. All 3 of them stood together over the closest body. Sam drew the charter mark for fire, the disreputable dog barked one for cleansing, and Lirael drew those for peace and sleep, and pulled all the marks together. The marks met and sparked on the man's chest, became leaping golden flames, and a second later exploded to immolate the entire body. Then the fire died as quickly as it had come, leaving only ash and lumps of melted metal that had once been belt buckle and knife blade. Farewell, said Sam. Go safely, said Lirael. Don't come back, said the dog. After that, they did the ritual individually, moving as quickly as they could among the bodies. Lirael noticed that Sam was at first surprised, then obviously relieved that the disreputable dog could cast the charter marks and perform a rite that no necromancer or pure free magic creature could do, because of the rite's inherent opposition to the forces they wielded. Even with the 3 of them performing the rite, the sun was high, and the morning almost gone by the time they finished. Not counting the unknown number of people taken by the Ferenc to its muddy lair, 38 men and women had died in the field of thorn trees. Now they were only piles of ash in a field of rotting mules and ravens, who had come back, croaking their dissatisfaction at the diminution of their feast. It was Lirael who first noticed that one of the ravens was not actually alive. It sat on the head of a mule, pretending to pick at it, but its black eyes were firmly fixed on Lirael. She had sensed its presence before seeing it, but hadn't been sure whether it was the deaths of 8 days ago she felt, or the presence of the dead. As soon as she met its gaze, she knew. The bird spirit was long gone, and something festering and evil lived inside the feathered body. Something once human, transformed by ages spent in death, years misspent in an endless struggle to return to life. It was not a gore crow, though it wore a raven's body. This was a much stronger spirit than was ever used to animate a flock of just killed crows. It was out in the glare of the full sun, and so must be a 4th or 5th gate rester at least. The raven body it used had to be fresh, for such a spirit would corrode the flesh of whatever it inhabited within a day. Lirael's hand flew to Sareneth, but even as she drew the bell, The dead creature shot into the air and flew swiftly west, hugging the ground and twisting among the thorn trees. Feathers and bits of dead flesh dropped as it flew. It would be a skeleton before it went much farther, Lirael realized. But then it did not need feathers to fly. Free magic propelled it, not living sinew. "You should have got it," criticized the dog. "It could still hear the bell, even past those thorn trees." "Let's hope it was an independent spirit. Otherwise, we'll have gore-crows, at the least, all over us." Lirael returned Sereneth to its pouch, carefully holding the clapper till the leather tongue slipped into place to keep the bell still. "I was surprised," she said quietly. "I'll be quicker next time." "We'd better move on," said Sam. He looked at the sky and sighed. "Though I had hoped to have a bit of a rest. It's too hot to walk." "Where are we going?" asked Lirael. "Is there a wood or anything nearby that will hide us from the gore-crows?" "I'm not sure," said Sam. He pointed north, where the ground rose up to a low hill, the thorn trees giving way to a field that once must have been cultivated, though it was now home to weeds and saplings. "We can take a look from that rise. We have to head roughly northwest anyway." They did not look back as they left what had become a funerary ground. Lirael tried to look everywhere else, her sight and sense of death alert for any slight indication of the dead. The dog loped along next to her, and Sam walked to her left, a few steps behind. They followed the remnants of a low stone wall up the hill. Once, it would have separated two fields, and there might have been sheep on the higher pasture and crops below, but that was long ago, and the wall had not been mended for decades. Somewhere, less than a league or so away, there would be a ruined farmhouse, ruined yards, a choked well, the telltale signs that people had once lived there and had not fared well. From their high point, they could see the long cliffs stretching out to the east and west, and the undulating hills of the plateau. They could see the Raderland stretching from north to south, and the plume of the waterfall. Abhorsen's house was hidden by the hills, but the tops of the fog banks that still surrounded it were eerily visible. Several hundred years ago, before Caragor's rise, they would also have seen farms and villages and cultivated fields. Now, even 20 years after King Touchstone's restoration, this part of the kingdom was still largely deserted. Small forests had joined to become larger ones. Single trees had become small forests, and drained marshes had returned happily to swamps. There were villages out there somewhere, Lirael knew, but none she could see. They were few and far between, because just a handful of charter stones had been replaced or restored. Only charter mages of the royal line could make or mend a charter stone, though the blood of any charter mage could break a normal stone. Too many charter stones had been broken in the 200 years of the interregnum, for even 20 years of hard work to fix. "It's at least 2, maybe 3 days' solid march to Edge," said Sam, pointing northwest. "The Red Lake is behind those mountains, which we passed to the south, I'm glad to say." Lirael shielded her eyes against the sun with her hand and squinted. She could just make out the peaks of a distant mountain range. "We may as well get started then," she said. Still shading her eyes, she gradually turned a full circle, looking up into the sky. It was a beautiful clear blue, but Lirael knew that all too soon she would see telltale black blots, distant flocks of gore-crows. "We could head for Robles-town first," suggested Sam, who was also looking up at the sky. "I mean, Hedge is going to know where we are anyway, soon, and we might be able to get some help in Robles-town. There'll be a guard post there." "No," said Lirael thoughtfully. She could see a line of puffy, black-streaked clouds far to the north, and it had given her an idea. "We'd just be getting other people into trouble. Besides, I think I know how to get rid of the gore-crows, or hide from them at least, though it won't be pleasant. We'll try it a bit later on, closer to nightfall." "What do you plan, mistress?" asked the dog. She had collapsed near Lirael's feet, her tongue lolling out as she panted to cool down after the climb. This was a difficult task, since the sky was clear and the day was getting hotter and hotter as the sun climbed. "We'll whistle down those rain clouds," replied Lirael, pointing at a distant cushion of dark cloud. Good heavy rain and wind will blow away the gorkrows, make us hard to find, and cover our tracks as well. What do you think?" "An excellent plan!" exclaimed the dog with approval. "Do you think we can bring that rain down here?" asked Sam dubiously. "I reckon that cloud is about as far away as High Bridge." "We can try," said Lirael, "though there is more cloud to the west." Her voice trailed off as she really focused on the blacker cloud beyond the hills, close to the western mountains. Even from this far away, she could sense a wrongness in it, and as she stared, she saw the sheen of lightning within the cloud. "I guess not that cloud." "No," growled the dog, her voice very deep, rumbling in her chest. "That is where Hedge and Nicholas are digging. I fear that they may have already uncovered what they seek." "I'm sure Nick doesn't know he's doing anything bad," said Sam quickly. "He's a good man. He wouldn't do anything that would hurt anyone intentionally." "I hope so," said Lirael. She was wondering once again what they would do when they got there. Why did Hedge need Nicholas? What was being dug up? What was their enemy's ultimate plan? "We'd better keep moving anyway," she said, tearing her gaze away from the distant dark cloud and its flickering lightnings to look at the rolling land to the west. "What if we follow that valley? It goes in the right direction, and there's quite a lot of tree cover and a stream." "That should be practically a small river," said Sam. "I don't know what's happened to the spring rains down here." "Weather can be worked two ways," said the dog absently. She was still looking towards the mountains. "It may be no accident that the rain clouds hug the north. It would be good to bring them south for several reasons. I would like it even more if we could stop that lightning storm." "I guess we could try," said Sam doubtfully, but the dog shook her head. "That storm would never answer to any weather magic," she said. "There is too much lightning, and that confirms a fear I had hoped to lay to rest. I had not thought they would find it so quickly, or that it could be so easily entombed. I should have known. Astariel does not lightly tread the earth, and if Ferenc released already—" "What is it?" asked Lirael nervously. "The thing that Hedge is digging up," said the dog. "I will tell you more when needs must. I do not wish to fill your bones with fear, or tell ancient tales for no purpose. There are still several possible explanations, and ancient safeguards that might yet hold even if the worst is true. But we must hurry!" With that, the dog leapt up and shot off down the hill, grinning as she zigzagged around white-barked saplings with silver-green leaves and shot over yet another ruined stone wall. Lirael and Sam looked at each other, and then at the lightning storm. "I wish she wouldn't do that," complained Lirael, who had opened her mouth to ask another question. Then she went down after the dog, at a considerably slower pace. Magical dogs might not tire, but Lirael was already very weary. It would be a long and exhausting afternoon, if no worse, for there was always the chance the gorkrows would find them. "What have you done, Nick?" whispered Sam. Then he followed Lirael, already pursing his lips and thinking about the charter marks that would be needed to shunt a rain cloud 200 miles across the sky. They walked steadily all afternoon, with only short breaks, following a stream that flowed through a shallow valley between two roughly parallel lines of hills. The valley was lightly wooded, the shade saving them from the sun, which Lirael was finding particularly troubling. She was already sunburnt a little on the nose and cheekbones. She had neither the time nor the energy to soothe her skin with a spell. This was also a niggling reminder of the differences that had plagued her all her life. Proper Clare were brown-skinned, and they never burnt. Exposure to sun simply made them darker. By the time the sun had begun its slow fall behind the western mountains, only the dog was still moving with any grace. Lirael and Sam had been awake for nearly 18 hours, most of it climbing up the long cliffs or walking. They were stumbling and falling asleep on their feet, no matter how they tried to stay alert. Finally, Lirael decided that they had to rest, and they would stop as soon as they saw somewhere defensible, preferably with running water on at least one side. Half an hour later, as they kept stumbling on, and the valley began to narrow and the ground to rise, Lirael was prepared to settle for anywhere they could simply fall down, with or without running water, to help defend against the dead. The trees were also thinning out, giving way to low shrubs and weedy grass as they climbed. Another field that was returning to the wild, and totally indefensible. Just when Lirael and Sam could hardly take another step, they found the perfect place. The soft gurgle of a waterfall announced it, and there was a shepherd's hut, built on stilts, across the swift water at the foot of a long but not very high waterfall. The hut was both shelter and bridge, so solidly built of ironwood that it showed little sign of decay, save for some of the shingles missing from the roof. The dog sniffed around outside the river hut, pronounced it dirty but habitable, and got in the way as Lirael and Sam tried to climb the steps and enter. It was filthy inside, having at some time been subject to a flood that had deposited a great deal of dirt on the floor. But Lirael and Sam were past caring about that. Whether they slept on dirt outdoors or in, it was all one. "Dog, can you take the first watch?" asked Lirael, as she gratefully shrugged off her pack and settled it in one corner. "I can watch," protested Sam, bellying his words with a mighty yawn. "I will watch," said the disreputable dog, "though there may be rabbits." "Don't chase them out of sight," warned Lirael. She drew Nehema and laid the sword across her pack, ready for quick use, then did the same with the bell bandolier. She kept her boots on, choosing not to speculate on the state of her feet after 2 days' hard traveling. "Wake us in 4 hours, please," Lirael added, as she slumped down and leant back against the wall. "We have to call the rain clouds down." "Yes, mistress," replied the dog. She had not come in, but sat near the rushing water, her ears pricked to catch some distant sound. Rabbits, perhaps. "Do you want me to bring you a boiled egg and toast as well?" There was no answer. When the dog looked in a moment later, both Lirael and Sam were sound asleep, slumped against their packs. The dog let out a long sigh and slumped down herself, but her ears stayed upright and her eyes were keen, gazing out long after the summer twilight faded into the night. Near midnight, the dog shook herself and woke Lirael with a lick on her face, and Sam with a paw pressed heavily on his chest. Each woke with a start, and both reached for their swords before their eyes adjusted to the dim light from the glow of the charter marks in the dog's collar. Cold water from the stream woke them a little more, followed by necessary ablutions slightly farther afield. When they came back, a quick meal of dried meat, compressed dry biscuits, and dried fruit was eaten heartily by all three, though the dog regretted the absence of rabbit, or even a nice bit of lizard. They couldn't see the rain clouds in the night, even with a star-filled sky, and the moon beginning its rise, but they knew the clouds were there, far to the north. "We will have to go as soon as the spell is done," warned the dog, as Lirael and Sam stood under the stars quietly discussing how they would call the clouds and rain. "Such charter magic will call anything dead within miles, or any free magic creatures." "We should press on anyway," said Lirael. The sleep had revived her to some degree, but she still wished for the comfort of the sleeping chair in her little room in the great library of the Clare. "Are you ready, Sam?" Sam stopped humming and said, "Yes, I was wondering whether you might consider a slight variation on the usual spell. I think that we will need a stronger casting to bring the clouds so far." "Sure," said Lirael. "What do you want to do?" Sam explained quickly, then went through it again slowly, as Lirael made certain she knew what he planned to do. Usually, both of them would whistle the same marks at the same time. What Sam wanted to do was whistle different but complementary marks, in effect weaving together 2 different weather-working spells. They would end and activate the spell by speaking 2 master marks at the same time, when one was normally all that would be used. "Will this work?" asked Lirael anxiously. She had no experience of working with another charter mage on such a complex spell. "It will be much stronger," said Sam confidently. Lirael looked at the dog for confirmation, but the hound wasn't paying attention. She was staring back towards the south, intent on something Lirael and Sam couldn't see or sense. What is it? I don't know, replied the dog, turning her head to the side, her pricked ears quivering as she listened to the night. I think something is following us, but it is still distant. She looked back at Lirael and Sam. Do your weather magic, and let us be gone. A league or more downstream of the shepherd's hut, a very short man, almost a dwarf, was paddling in the shadows. His skin was as white as bone, and the hair on his head and beard was whiter still, so white it shone in the darkness, even under the shadow of the trees where they overhung the water. I'll show her, muttered the albino, though no one was there to hear his angry speech. 2,000 years of servitude already, and then to... He stopped mid-word and swooped into the stream, one knobby-fingered hand plunging into the water. It emerged a moment later, holding a struggling fish, which he immediately bit behind its eyes, severing the spinal cord. His teeth, bright in the starlight, were sharper by far than any human's. The dwarf tore at the fish again, blood dribbling down his beard. In a few minutes, he'd eaten the whole thing, spitting out the bones with curses, and grumbling between bites over the fact that he'd wanted a trout and had caught a redjack. When he finished, he carefully cleaned his face and beard and dried his feet, though he left the bloodstains on the simple robe he wore. But as he walked along the bank of the stream, the stains faded, and the cloth was once again clean and white and new. The robe was fastened around the little man's waist with a red leather belt, and where the buckle should have been, there was a tiny bell. All this time the albino had held it, using only one hand to catch the fish and clean himself. But his caution failed when he stumbled on a slippery patch of grass. The bell sang out as he fell to one knee, a bright sound that paradoxically made the man yawn. For a moment, it seemed he might lie down there and then, but with an obvious effort, he shook his head and stood up. No, no, sister, he muttered, clutching the bell even more fiercely. I have work to do, you see. I cannot sleep, not now. There are miles to go, and I must make the most of 2 legs and 2 hands while I still have them. A night bird called nearby, and the man's head flashed around, instantly spotting it. Still holding the bell, he licked his lips and, taking one slow step after the other, began to stalk it. But the bird was wary, and before the albino could pounce, it flew away, calling plaintively into the night. I never get dessert, complained the man. He turned back to the stream and began to follow it westwards once again, still holding the bell and muttering complaints. And that's the end of chapter 5. I like how that chapter ends. Anyways, I will, I'm tired. I will post chapter 6 tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I need a drink of tea. I am going to get myself together. Oh, I think I'm going to open these curtains. And then I'm going to get to making this other video, because I still want to get this out so I can just be done with this. I hope you will watch this other video I'm going to make. But if not, I understand. If you're just here for the readings, be here for the readings. I still appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed this chapter today. If you did, I would love if you would like this video, comment if you want to, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, and as always, may your magic manifest. Bye.